And now, stand-up community subscribers and listeners from around the globe, it's time to Stand Up with Pete Dominic, where we ask the important questions that impact you, your family, and your community. Such as, is this hearty whole wheat bread made with only 75% recycled cardboard? And could rotator cuff surgery help my elderly German grandfather finally return to lifting his enormous stein and pouring beer into his face hole? And now, the podcast host who looks at his faithful dog companion and says, yep, that's the facial hair look I'm going for, Pete Dominic.
Yes, you've nailed me again, Pete Co, announcer extraordinaire. I do. I look at the dog. She's got like a mustache, and she looks like some kind of a Civil War Confederate general. And I guess that's what you're saying I'm going for? How dare you? I'm deeply offended, sir. Joining the program today, I've got John Avlon of CNN. I've got Dean Obeidallah of SiriusXM. And I've got you. Welcome to the show. Thank you for joining me here on Stand Up with Pete Dominic Daily. It's two great conversations and a big old news recap, as always, for you coming your way. But first, I do want to address a couple of comments, emails, messages from yesterday's show. Kevin Payton commented on the subscriber page at patreon.com/Pete Dominic. We love you, Pete, but Glasgow, Scotland. Did I say Glasgow, England again? You know me. Once I start saying the wrong name or getting something wrong over and over, I guess my brain just commits to it. Deborah also responded and said, Pete, have you thought of hiring an intern to help you? A college journalism student. They're always in need of internship experience. Deborah, I have, and I think I may for the next semester. And I'm going to reach out to my old friend Karen Hunter at SiriusXM. So I may do that, and I appreciate the idea as always. Lots of you responded to yesterday's news segment where I talked about playing longer audio clips and, 2, 3, 4-minute audio clips. Last week, I think I played a 7-minute audio clip of David Attenborough at COP26, and lots of folks responded to that, appreciated it. I mean, you could always just skip ahead and fast forward. But my general feeling is my instinct, if I'm enjoying something for a couple or more minutes and there's a lot of context to it, then I'm going to try to share it. And it's easy to skip ahead on a podcast, like I said. But Dan Leaf wrote, I enjoy the full clips as well. People can always fast forward if they don't want to listen. And Kayleen also emailed me about it. So anyway, it looks like the consensus, at least from the feedback I got, was that you like it. And if you don't, you can skip ahead. And, I get a lot of correspondence in different platforms, emails and messages in so many different ways every day. I wish I could funnel it all in and share it every day. I should try to work harder at doing that. Please keep it coming. Email standupwithpete@gmail.com is still probably the best way. But if you've got other ways to reach me and I respond, I'm happy to hear from you, whatever works easiest. And if we've never talked, still always interested in setting up those chats. And if we've tried to 3 or 4 times and we keep missing it, let's keep trying. Couple more quick things I want to mention. Feedback from the audience of this here show. A lot of you just emailed to reach out and say, or contacted me to say how much you love Jeff Jarvis joining me. Terry reached out. Several, I should say, of you reached out because I mentioned the tracking your kids apps we use. Well, it doesn't matter which one you use. I don't want to plug it. But there's several of them. And my daughter got her license, and now she's driving. She's got the car, and these apps allow you to see how fast they're going and where they are at all times. And I just talk about I'm a little uncomfortable with invading their privacy as teenagers. I had so much autonomy as a teenager. My parents really left me alone, and I feel like I built trust with both them and myself because of it. But yeah, I got a lot of feedback on that. Terry said, you remarked that you don't have a firm opinion on driving surveillance. I'm not going to give you mine because I don't know your kids. You already know the best way to get an opinion is to gather data. May I suggest look into things like required age to get driver's license in countries like Germany and Italy, accident rates among teens versus a few years beyond that, etc. Yeah, I'm going to look into those statistics. And I appreciate you not leading me on, Terry, with your bias or personal experience. That was very diplomatic of you, but I really do want to know what you think of it. By the way, the minimum driving age, you have to be 18 years old in Italy and Germany. So maybe Terry is saying 16-year-olds are not ready to operate a motor vehicle yet? Huh. I'm going to think more about that. And then Rich Lasker asked me a good question. He's like, hold on a second, buddy. You talked about you got the booster on Friday. How did you qualify? And I guess I didn't realize that it wasn't being messaged well enough that everybody is apparently in now for the booster. A friend of mine texted me and said that he had just gotten his, my friend CJ. And I was like, well, if CJ got his, then I should be able to get mine. I think we're around in the same category, age and stuff. And so I called up Rite Aid, the local drugstore, and I said, what do you need to get the booster? And they said, nothing. Anybody who wants one can get one as long as you've had 2 shots prior. And I think something about, the time period since. And then you go through a questionnaire online to make an appointment. And there were no questions that disqualified me in terms of age or having any kind of comorbidities or anything. So I think everybody should qualify for a booster. I went back and forth with Rich on that, but let me know if it's not the case where you live. I'd like to know more. And just an email I got a few weeks ago that I wanted to share. David Q is a really interesting, smart guy who's been emailing and listening to the show for a long time. He's a doctor. And he emailed me and said, I liked your discourse. This is from a few weeks ago, but I really appreciated this email. I just wanted to share it with everybody. I think everybody should be able to hear this. David says, I like your discourse with Ophira today. Got a lot of feedback on that one. And he wrote, it's always great to hear how you can get people to open their insides and spill out their fears. When you asked her about resilience, you distilled it down to have a tribe and fellowship with people. Yes, that is the fundamental need, Pete. In my life, I've had levels of success that are extraordinary, and I've had despair that is beyond comprehension. Without egotistical attachment, I've been able to move forward with low stress and a high amount of happiness. Many years ago, while going through a difficult time, I spoke with my rabbi, and he said that he had advice that would help. Compassionately, he pulled me in close and whispered, when things seem bad, just say to yourself, I don't give a fuck. He expanded, other than people and relationships, nothing really matters. Grab happiness when it happens and don't attach yourself to the rest of it. Ooh, I like that, David. I like the way your rabbi put it, the way you interpreted it, and I'm very excited to hear about how you've been able to practice it. And I feel like I'm getting closer more and more often to having a similar practice and routine and relationship with my anxieties and stress and concerns in life. All right, if you're a listener of this program, you have something to offer, something to share. I'm always looking for thoughtful things, content here at the top of the program, feedback, jokes, criticisms, compliments, stories, whatever you want. It's all worth sharing as we learn and grow together each day in all kinds of different ways from each other. And finally, if you are a stand-up community member, and if you're not, why aren't you? Let's go. Sign up. Listen to the podcast. You love the benefits that come with being a member. You get like a whole bunch of new friends, I feel like. I almost want to sell it that way. It's no guarantees. Maybe you won't make friends, but so many people have. And it's been so wonderful for so many folks. So think about signing up now, and you won't feel alone, especially the Discord platform, which I'm going to start utilizing more. I just renewed the voice and video functionality, and so I'm going to pop in there more and set up some kind of like office hours, or maybe even every once in a while around 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock at night, I'll say, hey, join me and give me your commentary on what you think about what happened today or this question that is affecting a lot of people. I'd love to know your thoughts. So we can use Discord for that. And always happy to have you hanging out on Thursday nights with us for the Stand-Up Happy Hour Hangout. Sign up now. All right, well, lots of news to get to. Yesterday was a busy news day between President Biden signing the $1 trillion infrastructure bill into law, 6 teens being shot at a Colorado high school. Apparently no deaths. 5 were hospitalized. Alex Jones is found liable in the Sandy Hook defamation suits, which is awesome. He's now ordered to pay damages to 8 Sandy Hook victims' families in the suit. And Steve Bannon turned himself in and took advantage of all of the cameras being pointed at him to point back at his evil, dark agenda and promote his awful trash pile of a podcast. So plenty to talk about in today's Last 24. Let's get to it, shall we? All right, like I said, every day, today's show is brought to you by subscribers like you. Please sign up now. Also, this week we are sponsored by Indeed.com. If you're looking to hire the best talent at your firm, your company, go to Indeed.com/standup right now. All right, well, the top story on the first day of the third week of November is that President Joe Biden signed a BFD, as he called Obamacare when he was vice president. But this time he's president. It's a $1.2 trillion infrastructure bill. He signed it into law Monday. A lot of people were there. A lot of people spoke. A lot of things were said. But this is a key part of his economic agenda. It delivers $550 billion of new federal investments in America's infrastructure over 5 years, touching everything from bridges and roads to the nation's broadband, water, and energy systems. CNN reports, as does everybody else. Experts say the money is sorely needed to ensure safe travel as well as the efficient transport of goods and produce across the country. Nation's infrastructure system earned a C- from the American Society of Civil Engineers earlier this year. Let me give you a quick rundown on what's in it. I think that would be helpful to know. It calls for investing $110 billion in roads, bridges, and major infrastructure projects, which is, of course, less than the $159 billion that the president initially requested in the American Jobs Plan. Also included $40 billion for bridge repair, replacement, and rehabilitation. The deal also contains $16 billion for major projects that would be too large or complex for traditional funding programs, according to the White House. Some 20% or 173,000 miles of the nation's highways and major roads are in poor condition, as are 45,000 bridges, according to the White House. The investments will focus on climate change, mitigation, resilience, equity, and safety for all users, including cyclists and pedestrians. Really? Who cares about cyclists and pedestrians? I mean, they're all liberal wusses anyway, aren't they? I mean, aren't most pedestrians progressives? Let's be honest. Also in the package, $11 billion for transportation safety, including apparently a program to help states and localities reduce crashes and fatalities, especially for cyclists and pedestrians, apparently. What is with all these cyclists and pedestrians? Why do we care about it? How many really are there as a percentage of the rest of us? This is ridiculous, how much we're caring about them. You know, honestly, I'm starting to think that this bill was written by cyclists and pedestrians. It will also direct funding for safety efforts involving highways, trucks, and pipeline and hazardous materials, which I care a lot more about. Contains $1 billion to reconnect communities, mainly disproportionately black neighborhoods that were divided by highways and other infrastructure. This is actually something going on in my hometown of Syracuse, New York. Look into it. Package provides $39 billion to modernize public transit, according to the text. That's less than the $85 billion Biden initially wanted, but what isn't less than what he initially wanted? That's what compromise is, and unfortunately, it's not nearly as much as what we needed, but it's still a lot. Deal will invest $66 billion in passenger and freight rail, also $65 billion investment in improving the nation's broadband infrastructure, $17 billion in port infrastructure, $25 billion in airports. Here's Steve Cohen, Democrat. He is on the House floor just before it was signed, and he delivered an impassioned, supportive statement about what's in this infrastructure bill and what it means. He gets a little tripped up for a moment, but so did I. Cut him some slack, Jack.
Today is a major day. Not as major as the day we had about 10 days ago when the House passed with bipartisan support the bipartisan infrastructure bill. But we're going to have a bill signing in the White House in just a few minutes by President Biden. This is a big deal. We passed a bill that President Trump couldn't pass with a Republican Congress and without a Republican Congress. President Biden and this Congress passed it. It's going to mean road repairs, bridge repairs, airport additions, bridge observations and repairs. Ports in our country will be improved. Broadband will be extended. The electric grid will be improved. People will get access. This is what used to be bipartisan, people working together to get the infrastructure of our country that moves goods to ports, goods to people, makes our country tick, helps business, puts jobs together. This is an important bill. The Democratic Congress with 13 Republicans passed it. It's a great day to celebrate. America is on the move again. I yield back the balance of my.
All right, Steve Cohen, he got a little tripped up there on the whole bridge observation thing, but that's fine. He's usually pretty solid. And here is from that White House signing on a cold day in Washington, D.C. First, a quick clip from Chuck Schumer, who spoke at the ceremony, the bill signing. Senate Majority Leader representing the state of dad jokes.
To paraphrase one of my favorite former vice presidents, it's a big effing deal.
Oh, you got him. Chuck has a good joke, huh? Chuck Schumer, the Schooms. And now here is the Vice President, Kamala Harris, who's been the target of a lot of media controversy and palace intrigue. Here she is speaking. And she was kind enough to plug today's sponsor right here at the top.
Indeed, is an historic day today. From the very start of our administration, we were determined to follow through, not just on our promise to invest in our nation's infrastructure, but on the promises that the American people have heard for years now. And we would not be here today were it not for your leadership, Mr. President. From the very start, you welcomed Democrats, Independents, and Republicans to meet with us in the Oval Office. You welcomed ideas. You welcomed debate, all in the service of getting this bill done. And here is what I know to be true, Mr. President. You are equal parts believer and builder. And because you are, we are all better off. On behalf of our nation, thank you, Mr. President.
Well, there you go. Sounds like she likes him. Sounds like they're getting along to me. But I don't know that anybody said they weren't getting along. But there's a lot of politics at play here, obviously. She's the Vice President of the United States. Highly capable, highly accomplished woman, former Attorney General of California, former Senator from California. And he's almost 80. So obviously everybody's positioning to take over for the guy, and maybe as soon as the next time around. Well, it came time for the president to speak. There he is at the microphone, and they're chanting his name.
Thank you. Thank you, Heather. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Oh, thank you.
All right, well, here is the president. Just a quick soundbite from his speech at the ceremony.
When you see those projects starting in your hometowns, I want you to feel what I feel. Pride. Pride in what we can do together as the United States of America. Folks, you know, the same goes for my plan to build back better for the people. Getting folks back to work and reducing cost of things like child care, elder care, housing, health care, prescription drugs. Together with the infrastructure bill, millions of lives will be changed for the better.
All right, well, the infrastructure bill is a lot more people speaking there yesterday, by the way, but the infrastructure bill is pretty popular in America. It's got like over 60% approval rating, but what does that mean for the approval rating of Democrats across the country? Well, that was the question that Chris Hayes of MSNBC's All In asked Ohio Democratic Senator and voiceover artist Sherrod Brown what he thinks about it.
I'm excited more about putting people to work, about building the Brent Spence Bridge, about what it means in Appalachia and the east side of Cleveland to the first students to have broadband. I'm excited about the investment in public transit systems in Ohio. We know that's all part of this bill. And I hear this about poll numbers, and first it's 11 months till the next election. But more importantly, it's because we aren't talking about what we have accomplished. We didn't talk enough about the child tax credit, which 90% of Ohio families since July have gotten getting a $3,000 tax cut. 90% of Ohio's families are getting at least that amount. We didn't talk about fixing the pension system. We're not. So once these two bills are done right now, this one and the infrastructure and then Build Back Better, and we all go on the road and we start talking about it and how it affects people's lives. And it clearly affects people's lives in a positive way. And, I want voters in Macon, Georgia in July to say, I voted for Biden and Harris, and I voted for Warnock and Ossoff, and my life got better. And that's what we're going to be seeing seeing and hearing. And those poll numbers will look very different, and the election will look very different in 2022.
All right, well, we'll see what happens with this infrastructure bill, how it gets implemented. The Biden administration tapped the former mayor of New Orleans, very well liked, respected guy in Democratic circles, and certainly in New Orleans and Louisiana, Mitch Landrieu, who I've met and hung out with a couple times at the Aspen Ideas Festival, and a great guy, smart guy, a great leader. I don't know how he'll be at implementing this $1.5 trillion infrastructure bill, but I'm interested in to see what happens with that. All right, so there is a lot of talk about Kamala Harris this week because CNN published a report that got a lot of attention titled Exasperation and Dysfunction Inside Kamala Harris's Frustrating Start as Vice President. And there's also a lot of chatter about the successor of Joe Biden. Who's it going to be? Is it going to be her? Is it going to be Pete Buttigieg? Politico writing about that. New York Post writing Kamala Harris has been sidelined amid growing tensions with Biden. So there's a lot of gossip out there right now. And apparently, Ron Klain, President Biden's chief of staff, saw the need to talk about it. So he went over to CNN. He talked with Anderson Cooper. Here's that.
I'm wondering what you make of that report. Can you say tonight whether there's total agreement inside the White House about the vice president's portfolio?
There is. She's doing a magnificent job. By the way, in that report, I'm quoted as saying what I believe, which is that there's no vice president I've seen that's gotten off to a faster start than Vice President Harris. She's doing an amazing job for the president. I had the honor of being with her the Friday night. We passed this infrastructure bill in the House of Representatives. She was on the phone, working the phones, delivering votes. She's a big part of the reason why we had this bill signing today.
But her poll numbers seem even lower than the president.
Well, again, Anderson, polls go up, polls go down. What I know is she is delivering for the American people. She helped us deliver on this infrastructure bill. She then got up a few days later and went across the ocean to France and spent a week over there helping to repair and strengthen our alliance with America's oldest ally. She's delivering for the American people every day. She's doing a fantastic job, whether it's on domestic matters or international matters. I'm delighted to be her next door neighbor in the West Wing. I have a chance to talk with her almost every day she's in the White House. And I can tell you, she is doing a phenomenal job as vice president.
Ron Klain, I appreciate your time.
And the president's spokeswoman, Jen Psaki, weighed in over the weekend as well, tweeting, for anyone who needs to hear it, at VP is not only a vital partner to at POTUS, but a bold leader who has taken on key important challenges facing the country, from voting rights to addressing root causes of migration to expanding broadband. So White House is circling the wagons around and showing at least the public supporting of Kamala Harris, the vice president of the United States. Her approval rating is extremely low, 28%, historically low rating that trails Biden's 38% in a recent November USA Today Suffolk University poll. A lot of smart black folks coming out and supporting Kamala Harris, too, including Bakari Sellers. Well, I guess me saying that black folks are supporting him insinuated that this Bakari Sellers comment is more one about race, but he's more, I think, drawing a distinction about sexism and gender, at least in the quotes I'm pulling here, who says, I have a larger issue with the tone and tenor by which Kamala Harris is covered, and I think we saw that in this article. When you have these articles come out, it puts a lot of us in a defensive posture because we see a lot of people are treating Kamala Harris the same way they treated Hillary Clinton, which is attempting to end her political career in a death by a million cuts. So Bakari Sellers criticizing his CNN report on CNN's New Day, which is pretty interesting. I couldn't find the sound, and I spent way too much time trying to find a sound for that. But I unfortunately do have the sound of Tucker Carlson jumping on this stupid bandwagon, saying this on his show on Fox News.
Kamala Harris. Most people probably don't know she really grew up in Canada. That's where she went to high school. She's not from this country in that sense, or she's certainly also from Canada. Okay, didn't know that. Doesn't mean she's not going to be a good vice president, but why haven't we heard that?
Huh, wow, that's so weird. That's so interesting and weird. Anyway, that was Tucker Carlson trying to take a shot at Kamala Harris, as he often does. And I guess they dug Michelle Bachmann out of a cryptic church somewhere in the middle of Iowa, where she believes that women should be subservient to men. And she said this about America's first female and black vice president.
Not really. She sounds a lot like Meghan Markle, to be honest with you. Both of these are very entitled people who claim constant victim class. And the fact...
Yeah, these are two black women who have been unbelievably successful, far beyond I could ever imagine succeeding. And so, I mean, they've had a lot of luck. They're way too entitled, and they don't deserve it because they're black women. I mean, that's what I heard. I'm sorry, but that's what I heard. Maybe you didn't hear that. That's what I heard. That's what my ears heard when she said that. But maybe I'm being too sensitive. Now, I spent way too much time even putting together the segment and grabbing the clips that are being critical of Kamala Harris because it's just really not remotely the most important thing. It's a media-generated story, and that's why I wanted to point out. It all started with all these different media outlets, Politico, New York Post, CNN, writing these stories, these palace intrigue stories, where I'm not saying that they can't, and I'm not saying there's not plenty to criticize and that they're getting somehow leaks and that there might be some weird issues as one would expect between the vice president, who is, just over 50, and the president, who is almost 80, and other cabinet secretaries. I mean, these things are going to pop up. They can be talked about. But the important thing, of course, is the infrastructure bill. And here is the vice president of the United States talking about how they actually did something to make our lives better.
Now, this bill, as significant as it is, as historic as it is part one of two. To lower costs and cut taxes for working families, to tackle the climate crisis at its core, Congress must also pass the Build Back Better Act. The work of building a more perfect union did not end with the railroad or the interstate, and it will not end now.
All right. So that's Kamala Harris yesterday, and I think we can all just calm down about this drama and move on to something more important, which is, you know what that means. Steve Bannon news. Steve Bannon yesterday turning himself into the FBI on contempt of Congress charges and using it to make him more powerful than ever before and ranting about his podcast and shit. Doing his dumb but highly effective shtick for all the cameras and microphones yesterday.
I'm telling you right now, this is going to be the misdemeanor from hell for Merrick Garland, Nancy Pelosi, and Joe Biden. Joe Biden ordered Merrick Garland to prosecute me for...
All right, enough. We've heard enough, Steve Bannon. No, not the misdemeanor from hell, you dirty hack, you sweat pig, you fascist bag of potatoes. That should be a brand. Fascist potatoes. The white kind. The right kind? The white kind. Steve Bannon's fascist bag of potatoes. So we will see where that goes, if anywhere at all, and talk to experts about it. Actually, going in to see Glenn Kirshner. Going to have a drink with Glenn in New York tonight and catch up with him on this and plenty of other things as well. And finally, I've got for you a 2-minute announcement from Beto O'Rourke, who is running for governor of Texas. I thought I'd share this in its entirety in case you haven't heard it before. This is from yesterday.
I'm running for governor, and I want to tell you why. This past February, when the electricity grid failed, and millions of our fellow Texans were without power, which meant that the lights wouldn't turn on, the heat wouldn't run, and pretty soon their pipes froze and the water stopped flowing. They were abandoned by those who were elected to serve and look out for them. It's a symptom of a much larger problem that we have in Texas right now. Those in positions of public trust have stopped listening to, serving, and paying attention to, and trusting the people of Texas. And so they're not focused on the things that we really want them to do, like making sure that we have a functioning electricity grid, or that we're creating the best jobs in America right here in Texas, or that we have world-class schools, or that we make progress on the things that most of us actually agree on, like expanding Medicaid or legalizing marijuana. Instead, they're focusing on the kind of extremist policies around abortion or permitless carry, or even in our schools, that really only divide us and keep us apart and stop us from working together on the truly big things that we want to achieve for one another. It's a really small vision for such a big state. But it doesn't have to be that way. And I know that together we can get back to being big again, because I saw that in February when the electricity grid failed and those in power failed all of us. It was the people of Texas who were willing to put their differences behind them and get to work doing the job at hand, which meant helping our fellow Texans get through that crisis. We did this out of a sense of duty and responsibility to one another. Now imagine if the governor of Texas felt that same way. Well, there's something that you and I can do about that. I want you to be part of this campaign. And whether that begins today with a campaign contribution or signing up for a volunteer shift or just committing yourself to talking with your friends and family about how important this election is, I want you on the team. And I want to win this with you and for all the people of Texas. I'm looking forward to seeing you out there on the campaign trail. Thank you.
All right, there you go. Beto is running for governor in Texas. Can he win? What do you think? And what do you smell like? I'm just trying to see if you're still listening. Seriously, email me, standupwithpete@gmail.com, and tell me what you smell like right now as you're hearing this. And I'll read the most creative, funniest, or honest responses on tomorrow's show. Okay, well, that's all I've got for you the last 24 audio-wise, but I do have a lot more headlines to read real quick and make pithy comments about. It's time for the news dump, brought to you by Indeed.com/standup. Indeed, a hiring partner that gets you what you really want, a short list of quality candidates as fast as possible, because you can do it all. Attract, interview, and hire all at Indeed. Indeed.com/standup right now. Get a $75 credit at Indeed.com/standup to upgrade your job post if you sign up right now. Offer valid through December 31st. If you need to hire, you need Indeed. And several listeners have used it, and it's worked really well for them. So check it out. Okay, let's get to today's news dump jingle from the great Pete Coe.
Taylor Swift's new video with anti-vaxxing chump. Perhaps she didn't know him on today's news dump.
What is going on?
Okay, today's news dump is inspired by a more a gossipy story that I'm not. Usually it's an animal attacking and killing innocent people. But today it's, what is this? Taylor Swift. Let me Google this. Apparently Taylor Swift is featuring alleged anti-vax Miles Taylor in her new video. All right, I'm not going to read any more about this story. I just spent like a minute and a half learning about it. And damn you, Pete Coe. Got me again. All right, let's get to some more important news headlines for you in today's news dump. All right, here we go. This is really going to be rapid fire because I got to get this done and posted tonight. Let's start with great news. Mel Gibson is back. He's planning to bring back Lethal Weapon. He says the late director, Richard Donner, wanted him to continue the series. Did he? Okay, well, great. It's going to be a real hit. I wonder if Danny Glover's going to join you. Space station crew headed to lifeboats amid a scare because space debris for safety protocol amid reports the Russia deliberately blew up a satellite in test, apparently. So some space-age drama unfolding over our planet Monday. A helmet is being recalled. A youth medium-sized helmet is being recalled. If you have this helmet, ABUS is the name of the brand. Look into it. It's like a kid's bike helmet. Now in Los Angeles, I love this story. Diners have to ask for plastic utensils if they want them. Customers at Los Angeles restaurants only get plastic utensils and napkins if they ask for them under new ordinance taking effect yesterday, aiming to, of course, reduce waste. I love it. Journalist I talked yesterday about with Jeff Jarvis here on the podcast, named Danny Fenster, has been freed, is on his way home from military-ruled Myanmar. What else have I got for you? Bill B. in D.C. won't stop warning me and texting me about what's going on the Russia-Ukraine border. Now the head of NATO has caught up with Bill. He's urging Russia, not Bill, the head of NATO, Jens Stoltenberg. He's urging Russia to be transparent about its military plans after an increase in the number of troops on its border with Ukraine. Keep a close eye on that situation. And another border issue is between Belarus and Poland, where hundreds of migrants moved to a crossing point on the border on Monday, encouraged by Belarusian security forces, and what Poland's government said was another attempt by Belarus authorities to exacerbate the migration crisis there. And I don't care what you think about my pronunciation of Belarus. Okay, everybody probably knows that the Rittenhouse jury is beginning its deliberation on Tuesday morning, so all the legal analysts will be on standby in the green rooms, putting their makeup on, and so just ready to react and analyze the outcome of that trial, of course. Hollywood production workers narrowly approved a new contract with the studio's film and TV production crew workers, ratified a new contract with Hollywood and streaming giants over the weekend, ending a labor dispute that nearly led to an unprecedented strike. Talked about that with Rick Smith. And really important, 72% of people, Americans, are planning to celebrate holidays with just their households this year, according to one poll, compared to 79% last year. The poll also showed just over half the people surveyed would ask their guests to wear masks at holiday parties this year, compared to 67% in 2020. What are you going to be doing? A mayor in Maryland, the city of Cambridge, apparently has been arrested on 50 counts of distributing revenge porn. So be glad that's not your mayor. And finally, Senator Patrick Leahy of Vermont, who is 900 years old, has announced he will not be seeking re-election. No, he's 81. He served 8 terms, and he is currently the president pro tempore of the Senate, second highest ranking position in the chamber, and he is stepping down, announcing his retirement. I'm excited to see who will be running in Vermont. Well, that is your news dump, brought to you by Indeed.com/standup today. And now, ladies and gentlemen, it is time to get to my first guest of today's show. I've got John Avlon of CNN coming up. Lots to talk about. I had a great conversation with John. But first, I've got my old friend Dean Obeidallah, who joined me to talk about several issues, from some of what I talked about Kamala Harris being tarred and feathered right now, to Steve Bannon and our recollections of him and who he was and how he treated people at SiriusXM when he was there with us. And of course, we also talk about the whole Mike Flynn debacle and so much more. You can hear Dean on SiriusXM, where he is still hosting his program from 6 to 9 East on SiriusXM Progress, channel 127. Of course, Dean, a very funny comedian. Follow him on Twitter and subscribe to his newsletter and read him at CNN and MSNBC, where he does columns. Here now, my conversation with Dean Obeidallah. Dean Obeidallah is joining me. I see him all the time on my TV. We got to do a jingle for you.
That's a great one. That's better. Stephanie Miller's got one that Rocky Mountain Mike made, which is a parody of Obeidallah, Obeidallah, but yours is actually more organic, and I like it a lot.
Well, I really just made it up just then. I'm pretty impressed with myself.
That's what you do. You're an improv pizza yes and guy. Yeah. He just makes things, just improvises, just keeps going with stuff. I love it.
Yeah, and I love talking to you, and I'm glad that you're here, and I have a bunch of questions about things that you've been writing and saying and thinking, all important news issues. But real quick, how are you? How's the show? How are you existing in as we see the demise of democracy?
You know, I'm doing my best. I feel like it's a fight every day. I tell my fiance that. She goes, "What are you doing on the show?" I go, "I'm saving democracy every day." Yeah. I really feel like it's a fight. I feel like we are in an existential threat against Steve Bannon, Trump, and the right, and Marjorie Taylor Greene, and even Kevin McCarthy's, who really just want power because they want to impose their policies. It's not like they want power for no reasons. They want power to force us to bend a knee so they can impose the policies they want on all of us. So it's really a battle. And I think they view democracy as a speed bump to their goals. It's no longer the vehicle. It's an obstacle. And that's what makes it dangerous right now.
And it's not only that view of democracy, but as you've written in a recent piece at CNN, right? They also view the future, their dream world, their utopia, as a theocracy, which you've written and talked about for years because you've been accused of wanting to create one. How is your theocracy going, by the way? It seems like Michael Flynn and Steve Bannon are doing a better job than you.
You know, I've wanted to impose Islamic law known as Sharia for a long time, but it's just not catching on in America. You know, I do a soft sell now. I do the whole thing. Turkey bacon's better for you. that kind of thing. Like, you're going to live longer. It's not about not eating pork.
Yeah,
I just want to help you. I wear a little badge. Let me explain how I can extend your life. They're like, oh, what's that about? Turkey bacon. Then I start talking about the evils of alcohol. Next thing you know, have you heard of Muhammad? They're like, what? Boom. And there you go.
Where are you? Is this in the subway? Where do you meet? Like a Scientologist stand?
Every time I go on, anytime people ask me about Islam, I tell them, look, folks, just eat turkey bacon. It's better for you. I'm not trying to push the faith. Dude, I have no faith, any faith. I don't care what faith you are. I really don't. I'm not trying to recruit anyone. I'm doing a PSA for turkey bacon, not because I'm Muslim, but because you'll actually live longer. But no, we're not trying to convert anyone. We all know that. Look, Pete, I was critical race theory. Muslims were critical race theory. That was Sharia law. They fabricated a story saying we want to impose Sharia. They passed laws in numerous states to prevent the passage of Sharia, which wasn't even happening. And then they gin up their base to go, look, we saved you from this phantom menace. Literally, it's exactly the analogy to critical race theory. It's not being taught in schools. We know that. They created it. And they go, we're going to pass laws to protect you from it. And their base goes, thank you. Thank you. And then my experience tells me they will stay with CRT as long as it works, and then they will move on. No one talks about Sharia law now. It would be laughable. It's like, what are you? You're 2006. You're so 2016. No one cares about Sharia anymore. So
the propaganda campaign that the right launched in media and politics, it was everywhere. It wasn't extremists about creeping Sharia, you and your Muslim-y friends have been trying to propagate in this nation since 9/11. That is actually the propaganda campaign that serves as the model for CRT. And before that, it was probably something else. But
probably gay marriage. Well, look, marriage equality was real. People really wanted that. That's the difference. The difference with the CRT and Sharia, non-existent. No one was pushing either one.
So I think that the Christian theocracy, or what do you think of the term Christo-fascist for someone like Michael Flynn? Do you like that? I like that one. Christo-fascist.
I like it because the right used to use the term Islamo-fascist. And they would say, we want to impose Islamic totalitarian society in America. There was no evidence. There's nobody. There's nobody who was saying that, but it didn't matter. So I don't mind. Call them whatever you want. I call it, I wrote about it for CNN. I think it's really un-American. The idea of trying to destroy, they want to cancel the First Amendment, which says that Congress should make no law that is, creating any one religion. That's the essence. I'm paraphrasing it, but we understand what it's about. So if you're out there saying there should be one religion, you're saying you want to cancel the First Amendment. You don't believe in our Bill of Rights. You don't believe in our Constitution.
You wrote a piece about this at CNN, and let's just play. I played it on yesterday's show, and I'm sure people didn't hear it or see it anywhere but my podcasts. But here it is. This is Michael Flynn. Where was he? Some kind of religious conference.
He was at the Reawakening tour. They're doing this Reawaken America tour. He's on it. Mike Lindell, Roger Stone, just the best people.
Did your agent reach out to you for that?
I'm trying to get booked for it right now. Yeah. I'm like, who opens for that?
Do they have a warm-up?
No, I just want to see, a little comedy. Hey, I'm with you. We all want to impose our own religious beliefs as the law of the land, right? Come on. Except I'm Muslim.
Do you know if they have a warm-up comedian for this?
All right. I think it's Vince August.
Vince. Here it is, Michael Flynn at this weird conference. 26 seconds for us to refresh our memory about his ambitions.
And they're talking about the United States of America. Talking about the United States of America, because when Matthew mentioned it in the Bible, he wasn't talking about the physical ground that he was on. He was talking about something in the distance. So if we are going to have one nation under God, which we must, we have to have one religion, one nation under God and one religion under God, right? All of us together, working together.
He's not very well spoken, Michael Flynn.
He was he's better when he's lying to the FBI, but he's not really good there. He's really much more articulate when he's lying to the FBI, covering up his stuff with Trump and lobbying for Turkey. He's really effective at that. But this stuff, nobody, you heard one nation under God. And the clip continues, by the way, to go, I don't care what ecumenical service you are, which is just different strains of Christianity. So I don't care what kind of Christian you are. Even Catholics will take them. Because just so it's clear, Catholics, evangelicals hate us. My mom's Catholic, so I know that. So you have Reverend Jeffers, who's called Catholicism like the spawn of Satan, and he was in Trump's inner circle. So evangelicals hate everyone who's not them. But he was trying to be nice there. He was being the liberal Michael Flynn by going, I don't care what kind of Christian you are. He almost said, even those Catholics can join us, but he didn't quite say that.
Yeah.
They don't like Catholics either.
So where does this go? This isn't fringe.
No.
How do you qualify how many people believe and follow and subscribe to that at this point? So many good books.
I have numbers right here. I put it together on the graph.
Got it.
Right? I've done numbers that it says right here.
Look, he's got charts.
I will tell you this. The exit poll of 2020 showed that 75% of white evangelicals voted for Donald Trump. 75%. They saw Trump for 4 years and they go, that's what Jesus would want. That's what they're saying. Because it's not. It's because, let's be honest. Everyone out there listening, think about this. If you gave these evangelical Christians a choice between democracy or banning abortion, what would they pick? They would pick banning abortion every day. And they're showing that now with their rejection of democracy. We are at the point where they are openly going to rebel against democracy because they're doing that. So this is what we're dealing with. We're dealing with a movement. I don't know what percentage, but I can tell you, as I wrote in my article, in Texas, Greg Abbott, when he signed that law in March, the vigilante law, and Asa Hutchinson, the governor of Arkansas, in March banned abortion from day one. That was stopped by the courts. They both cited their Christian, their own view of Christianity. A lot of Christians don't agree with them. Life begins at conception.
Right.
That's not a public policy discussion. That's saying, here's my religious beliefs. I respect that. But now I want to turn them into the law of the land. I don't respect that at all. That's un-American. And that's what we're dealing with.
Certainly. And in your article, which just started playing audio, I don't know if you heard that on CNN.
It always plays audio. CNN is
CNN.com.
No matter what you do, there's a voice playing.
Trying to do an interview with Dean and promote the article, and it just takes over my entire podcast.
It will. It'll slow down your motor, everything. It'll slow down your computer memory. I have them all the time.
So you talk about more specifically. I mean, we're talking about Michael Flynn, but somebody might want to call him a fringe or something. But you write about Mike Huckabee, who ran for president in 2008, who bluntly said the U.S. Constitution be amended, quote, so it's in God's standard, phrasing he later clarified after critics caught wind of the quote. And during his 2012 presidential run, Dean writes, Rick Santorum declared, quote, our civil laws have to comport with a higher law, God's law.
Right. And by the way, it's the Christian God, their view. They're very proprietary about God. They make it very clear. They say Judeo-Christian, but they mean their Christian God, not the Muslim God, even though we share the same God. If you believe in faith, we're Abrahamic faiths, all three of us, Christianity, Judaism, and Islam, where the faiths are built on each other. But they literally make it clear, Rick Santorum and Huckabee, when they speak of God's law, when they speak of religion, they mean Christianity. So they've been point blank. We want the Bible. You know, Mike Huckabee also said, and I didn't put it in there, we can't amend the Bible, but we can amend the Constitution to agree with the Bible. They're very clear. You imagine a Muslim, imagine Congressman Ilhan Omar said, we can't amend the Quran, but we can change the Constitution to agree with the Quran. Explosion.
Well, it is a Christian nation, Dean.
It is. You know, look, if they want to impose, here's the thing, Pete. If they want to start imposing the Bible, start with Matthew, where it says, I was hungry and you gave me something to eat. I was thirsty, you gave me something to drink. You were a stranger and I welcomed you in. Start with that part of the Bible. Then we can talk about other things. Don't start with your own twisted interpretation of it.
Your Pope there, he was talking about that at his thing yesterday. What's it called? His every Sunday get together.
Mass?
Yeah. Is it Mass? No, that's I don't know. I don't know if it was a special. I think he was shooting a special.
Was that with Oprah and Adele?
It was with him and a bunch of poor people, indigent people they were described. And he talked all about, how the first priority should be fighting poverty, which is exactly what you're saying, which is what we've talked about for years, you and I, in terms of religion and picking your favorite or least favorite issues. You've written about this for years. And it's not going away. It's growing, this influence, and it's overlapping with conspiracy theories, with QAnon people, and affecting us in terms of the COVID vaccination rates. I mean, this is where it all ties in, this theocratic ideology.
Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. I don't know where the theocratic part of this plays in, but I will tell you today's GOP is much more white nationalist, Christian theocracy, theocratic party that is rejecting democracy, embrace autocracy, and I would argue because they've embraced January 6th and defended fascism, because fascism is at its essence the undemocratic means to retain or acquire power. plus violence. You need the violent part. And there's a CBS poll in July of Trump supporters. 55% view January 6th not as an act of terrorism, Pete, but as an act of defending freedom. Their exact words in the poll. So our media doesn't do a great service in amplifying what the GOP base is about, which is MAGA, that they really are a violent movement. And I don't know why. They'd rather smear Vice President Harris in a series of articles over the weekend, like 4 or 5. Oh, what a horrible job she's doing and all this stuff, as opposed to focusing on what's really going on with the other side. I've never been more disappointed with our media, except for 2016 when they were giving Trump ratings, free press.
Yeah.
I'm now probably just as disappointed. The corporate media has been horrific in all of this. They are so pro-drama, pro-ratings. They are not pro-democracy. Democracy doesn't get you revenue. Drama, conflict, negativity gets revenue. And it's really sad to see what's going on. I cannot believe, and I know a lot of Democrats feel the same way. We've never seen the media this bad.
What is it that you specifically are criticizing here with this Kamala Harris story? You've been tweeting about this.
It's nonstop negativity about Vice President Harris. Nothing positive whatsoever. There's no balance. There should be balance. There's nothing wrong with what if you do reporting and you find out there's some kind of tension between the president and the vice president. We probably see those articles every administration. I get it. But VP Harris, it's one thing. I see nothing positive in the articles. They wonder why her approval ratings are going down. She goes on trips. The media ignores her. They'd rather cover Trump's statements that he can't even tweet. Washington Post has an article today. Donald Trump banned from Twitter, but put out a statement like this today. And they put the statement just like it's a tweet. You're elevating the guy because he's good for ratings. And the truth is, Pete, cable news ratings have come down. They always do after a presidential year, but they've come down for Fox about 40%. But for CNN and MSNBC, we're talking about 55 to 65% drops. There's been more of a drop for them. So I think they're pivoting back to more. They think that Trump stuff is going to get them ratings. They don't realize it's Democrats peeling away because they're covering too much Trump stuff.
Now, you, Dean Obeidallah, are not loyal to any corporate media necessarily. You're at SiriusXM. You write for CNN. You write for MSNBC.
I'm freelance.
He's a freelance.
I criticize them all the time. I have no problem.
But you have a recent piece at MSNBC, which is about Trump's COVID failures. I talked with John Avlon. Our friend John Avlon is also on this episode with you. You'll see your faces together on the promo.
I like John. He's a good guy.
Yeah. And talking about Trump's COVID failures. Trump lies about COVID very likely killed Americans. Where is the accountability? What would you this is a piece of
that article's actually it's funny, that article's from January, but it came up because Mehdi Hassan, my friend. Yeah, but it got new life on Twitter over the weekend. Mehdi Hassan, so like Glenn Kirshner, our mutual friend, has been the only one talking about where's the criminal prosecution for Trump for COVID. And I interviewed Glenn during COVID a year ago for Daily Beast. And then I wrote that MSNBC article in January and I re-interviewed Glenn and he's quoted in there going, folks, we can't let this go. He lied intentionally. He lied and people died. And there should be a criminal prosecution. And what happened is Mehdi was saying that Glenn's the only one talking about this and no Democrats are. And he's absolutely right. There are a few Democrats who will talk about Trump should be prosecuted for January 6th. Very few. Congressman Bill Pascrell in Jersey being one of the most outspoken and one of the few. Nobody is talking about investigating Trump for criminality surrounding his lies on COVID. And I think there is something there. I agree as a lawyer myself.
There's new reporting about this, which is why I thought this was a recent article. Emails reveal new details of Trump White House interference in CDC COVID planning. They wanted to play it down, as any politician would not want to have this, would have the impulse to play down a disaster like this. But that doesn't mean you act on that impulse.
When we learned that Trump told Bob Woodward that he understood how dangerous his virus was and then lied to the American people, that was the smoking gun. That's what Glenn had been waiting for. Kirshner, a former federal prosecutor, to say, look, we have the mental intent here that this guy was intentionally misleading for political gain. And people died because of it. We don't know how many, but I think you can make a causal connection for a legal case. It's a hard sell. I did interview other former prosecutors who are a little bit more hesitant about that. But you would say that in America, if you're not going to hold a president accountable for lying to his own people and people died, what does accountability mean? What does law and order mean? What does a nation of laws mean? It means nothing. Does that really want the next president doing the same thing?
I wanted to ask you another big kind of political question, what your thoughts were on the future of the Democratic Party, given, new polling and the recent, the elections from 2 weeks ago. We've got a midterm election that is so important coming up. And a lot of people are saying, if Republicans gain back the House, democracy as we know it is over. We've been hearing that for years. And is there anything that Democrats can do? Oh, they need to message better. If only they can pass legislation and people see it affecting their lives. I'm reading all about this. I'm thinking a lot about it, but I want to hear what you think, right, Dean, and what your listeners think about the future of the Democratic Party, what they're doing right, what they're doing wrong, Joe Biden's approval rating, all of it.
I'm glad you asked this, Pete. I wrote last week for MSNBC about this very point. And I told people, look at the New Jersey election, not just the Virginia. You should be more alarmed by New Jersey. Because people go, oh, well, Murphy won. He pulled it out there. It's okay. You look at the real numbers. Phil Murphy got 1.3 million votes. Joe Biden the year before got over 2.6 million. 50% of the people who voted Democrat in 2020 did not show up in 2021. Democrats, Murphy won, but we lost at least 4 state legislative seats, maybe 6. They're waiting for 2 more, and a state Senate seat. The Senate president lost. This is very bad. We are losing. And here's the worst part of it. I told people Jersey is important. In New Jersey, Phil Murphy, as governor, passed the Democratic wish list. He had free community college.
Right.
He paid family leave, legalized marijuana, criminal justice reform, raised taxes on the wealthy. So if the idea for Democrats is just pass policy and we're going to win the off-year elections, that's not what does it. When you look back at midterms, and in my article I cited, exit polls, the number one factor of people who voted in the biggest numbers in the exit polls, they asked them their mental state, all these questions. The answer, Pete, angry. They were angry. Angry people come out in midterms. Democrats are not angry. They're frustrated. They're disappointed. Some of the people who were part of our coalition were angry at Trump. He's gone. We can't use Trump. Terry McAuliffe tried in Virginia. I get why. I know why he was doing it. It didn't work. We have to deliver policy and actually anger people closer to the midterm, starting in the summer on. People can't be angry every day. And what I mean by angry is it's red meat. Red meat for our base is not critical race theory. Red meat for our base is the Texas abortion laws that they're going to pass all over the country. They're the idea of suppressing our democracy. When I talk to Democrats on my show and online, and I just tweeted about it last week, is that there were about 4 reasons I heard that Democrats had checked out or lost enthusiasm. One is not making voting rights a top priority, not criminally prosecuting Donald Trump, the idea that we won, but it still feels like we lost. 4, just burnout was 4. And 5th was Democrats not fighting hard enough against the GOP to make them feel proud about it. And a lot of those are ambiguous, Tom. The policy one's the only one that's really tangible. But look, there are Democrats and some of our allies who have checked out. And I have Democrats getting mad with me for highlighting those points. I'm not highlighting them a week before the midterms. I'm highlighting them now. We got a year to figure it out. I believe in reality. I believe in being pragmatic. You look at your problems and you try to correct it. We got messaging problems. I get that too. But look, we got to give people a reason to vote that's real. You can't lie to Democrats and get them to come out. They felt Trump was a palpable threat to our nation, and they were right. We were right. This GOP is just as bad, and we've got to make that case. And the media's not going to help us because they want drama. We have to make the case that this GOP is a threat to our democracy. It's a threat to all of our values, pluralism, tolerance. They'll roll back marriage equality. They really will. Look, they're rolling back Roe versus Wade from 73. They gutted the Voting Rights Act from 65. It's gone. We don't have a Voting Rights Act that's functioning right now because their Supreme Court gutted it. They waited 20, 30 years to do it. They did it. We've got to be in for the long haul. We got to engage people and get them. So the bottom line is it's not over. Don't be defeatist. The media's painting pictures today. I just saw an article. It's essentially over for Democrats because the GOP is redistricting through gerrymandering. They're going to pick up some seats. In New York, we're going to pick up like 4 seats. No one's talking about that. We're gerrymandering the crap out of the map here in New York. So, look, folks, it's going to be even in that regard. It's up to us to come out, get your friends out. And we have to make people believe it's not just empty rhetoric. This is really our democracy on the line.
Yeah, you make so many good points there. And there's a great article that Dean has on this at MSNBC where he's a contributing columnist as well. So finally, just on that, though, local politics, getting involved locally. I'm involved in our local DOE, BOE. What's a DOE?
Board of Estimates? What is BOE?
The Board of Education.
Board of Education.
We've got the whole.
You do critical race theory. You're the critical race theory guy, right? You're there saying, Here's why we should teach critical race theory.
Well, I'm the thoughtful white guy confronting another white guy, which is definitely effective. And it really is at these meetings and with local activism we're organizing. How important is getting involved locally at the BOE, at the town level? Because I got lost at SiriusXM doing a national show, not talking about the importance of local politics as much. And now it's more important than ever, as you can see this shit playing out. You never went to a BOE meeting before, and all of a sudden you better show up, is my point.
I agree with you. Grassroots activism is the key to changing. First, you might want to run for office. Once you go there, it's great to have more people running who really care and are passionate. Second, no matter what, they're not used to being people showing up like they are now.
Right.
So if it's all one side, it's easy for them to go for that one side because, like, well, I guess nobody cares enough on the other side. Coming out to those meetings is important. Getting involved, writing letters to the editor, joining, if you happen to be a Democrat, your local Democratic organization, or at least get active in issues you care about. I think people don't believe that they can make an impact, that they can actually change things. It takes less people to change policy than you think, and that most people are not engaged. Most people are too busy with their lives. If elected official like your council people get 10 people calling on an issue, to them that means like hundreds of people are concerned and they care. If you can get them to have 50 people calling on an issue and letters and showing up at their office, or the mayor, to them you can move local officials so much easier than U.S. senators and members of the House and state legislators. So get involved, like Pete is saying. You can have an impact. You can move things. You can change things on a local level. It percolates up. And I'll tell you, the GOP is afraid of their base. For often Democratic officials, they tolerate us to ignore us. I have to be honest about it. And the more of us engage, the less they can ignore.
I'm learning that locally, exactly what you just said. I'm seeing exactly what Dean just said in my local Democratic Party, which I've recently got involved, which I can't believe I wasn't earlier, and as well as a local DEI kind of organized group trying to fight this crazy shit in our town. It's nuts.
I agree. I mean, I was not involved in Al-Qaeda for years, but now I understand the importance of getting involved with the grassroots. I'm kidding, folks. I'm much more of a Hamas guy. I'm kidding again.
We don't even talk about. It's crazy to me that we don't talk about Muslim extremists the way that we once did.
Well, things have changed because, again, they'll circle back to us. They're going to. It's not. We're never gone. We are an easy target, but now we're a much more organized community, so things have changed a little bit. But they'll circle back, and God forbid there is another terrorist attack by some guy who happens to be Muslim. It could happen. We've seen some in Europe. It could happen here on U.S. soil, and that will spark more of the talk. But right now, I mean, we had just had the Arab American Comedy Festival you performed in. I told the audience about how, you remember, we used to be the scary ones. Now it's a white person who loses an election. They're the scary ones. You have to watch out for them. They're going to storm. We've never stormed the Capitol. Like, we just sit around. Like, they're the ones. And I even joked that we used to be critical race theory. Remember, we were the people who scared white people. Now they're like Muslims. I like falafel. I don't care about these people. And I'm happy we fade in that regard. I'd rather we just be a community like all other communities, trying to get involved in politics, trying to have our voice heard, running for office, making a difference. But I sadly know that things will circle back to us because they will use it. It works for their base. We're an other. We're a foreign other to them. Doesn't matter I'm born in Jersey. To them, I'm a foreign other, and they'll demonize us to score points. Right now, they're just playing defense on January 6th. So I think in that regard, Democrats have been pretty good with the committee. Steve Bannon today just surrendered. Which is great.
Oh, I didn't see that.
Yeah, he surrendered today. He made a little speech. He looks good. He'll fare well in prison.
Somebody said on Twitter, he's clearly already decomposing, which is always a funny joke. But yeah, that means him surrendering, though, Dean. This is part of his plan. I mean, this is going to. If he sits down and behind a microphone in that hearing room, there is nobody, I don't think, that will be able to take him on that panel. Nobody.
We'll see what happens. I mean, look, it's not, he can go, Steve Bannon could easily go to Congress, invoke the Fifth Amendment, or his lawyer can object, and he would have complied with the subpoena.
He doesn't want to know. He wants to be on camera.
He wanted this. And look, I'm reading a lot of history from World War II about the rise of Hitler and stuff. And when Hitler was charged with the beer hall putsch, his coup. He essentially arguably defended himself in trial and used his trial as a platform to get better known, to spread his views. Bannon's views are known. Bannon's known, but he will, of course, use it to make himself a martyr. I hope he gets jail. I hope he gets jail on both counts, and he can be a martyr all day and come out with more street cred, whatever. But let's see him spend 6 months in a prison cell, and Trump can't do anything about it. That's the best part.
Wonder how many jumpsuits he'll wear.
He's got a lot of hair care products. That's got to be bed hair, right? Doesn't his hair is like, guess what product in it? No. Awful. I can't believe he's only 67. Trump looks better. I hate to say that.
One of the weirdest things about my own personal or professional history is that I shared a studio with him, and you're still in that studio.
Well, I'm at home. He doesn't share my apartment.
Oh, that's right.
But he did. And Steve Bannon was an asshole before anybody even knew him when he was abusive to staff. And I told you about this. And I went to SiriusXM, one of the executives, and said he's being abusive to people who work on my show. I just had a 1 hour day show. So at the time they were working on other shows. He was yelling at them, throwing crap at them and stuff. And they promised to talk to him. I don't know if they did or not. I had no clout. I had a 1 hour a day show at the time. So, but I mean, he was just a bad person before this. It had nothing to do with Trump. He was not working for Trump. He was just being an asshole.
I saw and reported similar abuse.
I remember we discussed this.
Yeah.
He's bad. Look, these are the worst people. Trump's the worst people. Michael Flynn, Steve Bannon, Roger Stone, Paul Manafort, even Michael Cohen, who may have done the good thing, ultimately went to prison. You've got these are crime family. These are bad people.
All right, I'll let you go, but who are the best people? And by that, I mean, who is a guest that you've had on or a recent author, or somebody that you want to plug, somebody that you like, that you learn from the way that we learned so much from you, Dean?
I think it's different people for different things. Like Elie Mystal, who comes on, is very. Glenn Kirshner is great. I had Jared Bernstein on from the White House, the Biden economic advisor, on Friday, who gave the best explanation that made sense to me as someone who follows finance of why we have inflation. And I was really happy to hear his explanation because it made sense and it's true. It doesn't mean it's going to be the media narrative. So I'm always listening. I think radio's made me learn. It taught me to listen more.
Yeah.
I really listen to people when they're talking, when I'm not checking my email, but while they're talking, I really listen and I learn a lot. There's been some great members of Congress who've come on and share their views, but I learned.
I'm sorry. What were you just saying? I was just checking Twitter mentions. What were you saying?
I know. This is what you do. The hardest thing, being in studio where there's a guest there, you can't make your mind wander. But the old days, I don't have my TV on during the show. In studio, the TV was on.
Yes.
And I'd be talking to someone, and there's like breaking news, and I'm just reading the chyron, and I'm like, oh yeah, I'll get. And if you say yeah, people just keep talking, and I'm like, thanks for being on, and I'm like, breaking news, folks.
I know when I first designed my first home studio, I wanted it to have 50 screens because I would have tons of information everywhere, and it would be so many resources, and it would look great. And then I realized if I want to do a good radio show, I actually need to be listening to the person I'm speaking with, and so I decided to have no screens, and close my eyes and listen.
That's what I think it's made me better in life. I used to be much worse. I used to interrupt people much more, just a normal conversation. I've learned. I just sit there until they stop talking. And sometimes they fill the silence because they're talking and they stop and I just stand there. And then they keep talking more. And I think there's a different me here. I think I'm a better listener and more compassionate. I always think I was compassionate, but I think more empathetic and more compassionate because I really, I truly listen and think about what people say now. And I try to make sense of it. I'm like, that's interesting.
I'm so glad to hear that. I'm going to grab that clip from the Jared Bernstein conversation. I think it was up
on Twitter. I put it on Twitter. In media, I happened to pick it up because I had a slow Saturday, so I had nothing else to do. But it's on Twitter. I can send it to you. And the first part, the second part is more about Build Back Better, but he goes through really, really good explanation in 1 minute. I thought it was great, and it made sense, and it resonated as truth, though it wasn't political spin. It was the truth. So,
all right, I'll let you go, and I'll play it right now. Thank you very much, Dean.
Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it. Pete, you're a great guy. Pete taught me a lot about radio. The reason I got a show on SiriusXM was Pete was the first person to ever let me guest host for him. First as a guest, then as a guest host over time. And, so I always appreciate the support you gave me all through these years.
That's very kind of you to say. You've said it many times, and I appreciate it. Pay it forward. The next Dean Obeidallah. It should be.
No, I'm bringing the ladder up. There'll be no other Obeidallah. I've stopped it. They have one other Muslim host now at SiriusXM. I'm like, I didn't approve that. I mean, I want him out. I want him dead. I want his. No, he's my friend Qasim Rashid, but he's on Urban View. But he comes on my show too.
Oh,
I'm really happy that they have another. He's on Saturday, so it's great to see that.
Look what we're doing. See, you are taking over.
We are, little by little. Sharia, turkey bacon. It's good for you. Remember that. Forget Islam. Eat more turkey bacon. You're going to live longer.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome. Take care, brother.
All right, there he goes, Dean Obeidallah. And here is President Biden's top economist talking to Dean on his SiriusXM radio show, that clip that we just talked about for you right now.
Can you explain a little so people understand that what is driving the inflation we're seeing right now?
I will. The first point I want to make, though, is that just in the way you teed it up, the president has been very clear on this point. He's calling this a top priority, and he knows firsthand how even a small increase, he's very sensitive to family budgets. This is something he talks to me about a lot. There are a near term and a longer term, or I'd say a near term and a medium term approach to this. The near term gets to your question, which is what is behind these elevated price pressures we're facing? Well, one of the things is that when we hit the pandemic, as I mentioned a second ago, people stopped engaging in in-person services, restaurants, concerts, traveling, even health services. People really pulled back. That means that their savings rates went up. They had some excess savings. And we also, very importantly, helped with relief for especially middle and lower income people to get to the other side of the crisis. What they did with those resources, they bought more than usual the amount of goods. So manufacturing goods demand went way up relative to its previous trend, and services demand went way down. Now, while those manufacturing goods were demanded, you had COVID upon the land, and supply chains were starting to get snarled up. And so you had this interaction between this shift in the relative demand for goods over services and the problems that the virus was playing in our logistical supply chains. When it comes to building back better, when it comes to the infrastructure plan, these are measures, and this is as well understood as it needs to be, that will put downward pressure on inflation. That's not just me talking. You have economists like Larry Summers saying this, Mark Zandi from Moody's Economics saying this. We have 17 Nobel laureates signing a letter that says, and I'm going to quote here, that these bills will enhance the ability of more Americans to participate productively in the economy. It will ease longer-term inflationary pressure. So these plans, according to a wide spate of economists we've talked to, even those who've been critical of the inflation scenario, say that these plans will ease longer-term inflationary pressures, not boost them.
All right, well, that's an interesting spin, take, insight from Jared Bernstein on Dean's show. Dean Obeidallah, follow him on Twitter. Let him know that you heard him here on the show, or maybe even call into his radio show and say, hey, Dean, I heard you on Pete Dominic's podcast. So tell then his listeners to come listen to the podcast. How about that, huh? For a sneaky scam. All right, now it's time to get to my second guest of today's show. He is the former editor of the Daily Beast. He was a former speechwriter for Rudy Giuliani when he was the mayor of New York City during 9/11. He's written several books, including one about George Washington. His next book is about Abraham Lincoln. It comes out in February of next year, I think he told me during this interview. Yeah. You can see him on New Day on CNN almost every day, where he's a contributor and often anchor. He is doing basically an online column now, which is so good, at Reality Check, which now has a digital series, which you got to check out. Really good work that John continues to do at CNN. My old friend on Twitter, at John Avlon, joins me right now. I got him. He's just off the desk, the CNN morning show, New Day, and I'm watching the morning show on Apple. Have you watched it, or would that be too traumatic for you, John Avlon? Thank you for joining me.
You're very welcome, my man. I have watched episodes. It's a little like relaxing by returning to work. I mean, just in the pre-dawn and wake up and stuff like that. But it's a great show, great actors and actresses. My jams are a little less duplicative with my daily life.
Do you want to comment at all on the rumors around your affair with CNN's John Berman?
I'm glad we could finally get this out.
Nobody will hear it. It's just on my podcast. You can tell me.
Just between us. I actually met Juliana Margulies a little while ago, and she's great, man. She's
Juliana Margulies, is she in the morning show?
She is now, second season. Get up to speed before you're going to go waxing knowledgeable about. Yeah.
Oh, I haven't seen that yet.
Key plot
Okay.
point.
Yeah, fair enough. All right, I won't say anything. All right, well, there's a lot I want to get to with you today. You've been doing excellent work with your reality checks as usual. You got your book coming out. Plenty to discuss in terms of new information in the Trump administration that you've been covering during the Trump administration, but specifically January 6th. I saw you sharing Larry Sabato's tweet about we really should be calling January 6th an attempted coup. And to hear Larry say that and see you endorse it means to me that it's not a radical idea to refer to what happened last year, January 6th, as a coup. Why?
I mean, because I think the more information that comes out, we now have a second memo on how to overturn an election that was presented to the White House, this time by one of Trump's lawyers, Jenna Ellis, in addition to the John Eastman memo. The more information that comes out about how Trump and his team were trying to bully and pressure Mike Pence to overturning the election, overturning an election, overturning majority rule, that's an attempted coup. It's an insurrection. It's a sedition. And I think, there needs to be a lot more conversations about what legal and constitutional remedies are in place for that. But there's just nothing more serious. This isn't a scandal. And because Trump has shown every intention of running again and a political party in an incident of really, mass psychosis in terms of a political party turning into a cult of personality, seemingly backing a president who lost the popular vote twice, led them to disastrous results in the midterm elections of his presidency, and then tried to overturn the election, and he's still been considered the front runner. That's a real problem. So this is not a retrospective concern. There is an absolute public interest in getting all the information out against Trump and his team's attempts to block the information, which was my reality check subject tonight. Today, presidents are not kings, and the executive privilege exists for the republic, not to protect any one individual, as the judge said. So, you just look at the evidence that's already coming in, and there's a lot more to come out. And it certainly seems that is a totally appropriate description for what our country just endured. And we cannot flinch from dealing with the facts here, and we need to ensure there's accountability.
What do you say to many folks who, including, I think, Condoleezza Rice and a lot of folks on the different Sunday shows or political shows, I'm sure including yours, who say we can't look back. We need to look ahead. And we've heard this and seen this with the Bush administration, the Obama administration, in terms of, not having accountability for anything from torture to financial fraud. And it seems like this country, regardless, Republicans or Democrats, we don't look back. We don't hold people accountable. And what do you say to those who say we can't look back at the past?
Look, I'm a journalist who writes political history. I think there's an enormous amount of value in looking back to get an honest accounting of history so we can learn the right lessons and apply them going forward. That's essential. That does not mean that we are in an endless, sort of fixation on the past in terms of pointing fingers or playing whataboutism games. But what our country endured, less than a year ago with regard to the January 6th attack is a clear and present concern. And when a lot of folks say, I just want to turn the page, we need to look forward, not back, what they're really saying is, I think what happened is terrible, but it's politically inconvenient for my party to fixate on it. And to the extent that they're trying to create distance with Donald Trump, that's mildly healthy, but it cannot be at the expense of a full accounting of what happened. Just think for 1 second, we don't do this enough, about what Republicans would say if a Democratic president tried the exact same thing. Apply the same standards. It's not that hard, people. And there's just nothing more serious than a sitting president trying to use the powers of the presidency to overturn an election. Nothing.
You are obviously concerned about rising autocracy, authoritarianism around the country. I've been interviewing historians and experts on the issue for the last couple of years, unfortunately. So much of what they talk about in history is happening, is kind of unfolding around the world. And Ann Applebaum at the Atlantic has this great cover story, deep dive into it, I think this week or this month's issue. And I know you've been talking about it and writing about it. Like you said, you're a political historian. New book coming out in January?
February, Lincoln and the Fight for Peace.
So what do you say about the historians and what they're saying and the experts on it and what we're seeing not only in the U.S., but around the world?
Sure. First of all, anything Ann Applebaum writes is worth reading.
Yeah.
And I mean, she deserves a Pulitzer in my mind for her body of work over the last few years. And the latest Atlantic cover story, which has been crushing it under Jeffrey Goldberg over the last few years, is no exception. I think you got to look at the challenges we're having in our country in the context of global trends. I have said over and over again, and in some ways I can consider myself to be on the defending democracy beat. There's no more important issue, and you can understand that at home or abroad. But the reality is that 32 years after the fall of the Berlin Wall, liberal democracy is under assault around the world. A lot of people believe that the sort of rising tide of autocracies represent the direction of the 21st century. And we adults have an absolute responsibility to defend liberal democracy because we cannot take it for granted. This is a contest of different visions of governing.
Yeah.
And around the world. And I just don't think we can be neutral about it. The Biden administration is actually convening a summit of democracies in December. I think that's a very interesting, possibly important step. If the democracies around the world start creating alliances to support each other, we need to understand all the different factors that are driving the rise of autocracies, right? To some extent, if you want to do a unified field theory of it, it's a reaction to globalization that's threatening tribal identities that are very threatening to folks, that can be very dislocating. And we need to understand the places where people are sincerely feeling fears about changes in their own lives and their communities and their countries without kowtowing to them. This is a global phenomenon. And so we really need to look at those driving forces. And another big factor that I'm at home and abroad, I'm increasingly convinced is algorithms, social media. It's one of the reasons I think we're having a collective crisis of just an ability to agree on common facts. The algorithms, we know, the Facebook papers that have come out, lead people to extremism and conspiracy theories. They serve that stuff up. It's absolutely twisting our collective minds and our ability to reason together, which self-government depends upon. And at the very least, there are bipartisan bills, including the Filter Bubble Transparency Act, bipartisan bills where this may be something that Democrats and Republicans can agree upon. There is an urgent need to deal with this.
I'm not familiar with what you're talking about. Legislation that would deal somehow with social media algorithms?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you looked at Frances Haugen's, the Facebook whistleblower's testimony in front of Congress, in the Senate, and you look at what she recommended, and what's being proposed in the Filter Bubble Transparency Act is mildly different, but basically it's this. People want to get rid of Section 230. Other folks say, look, that's going to be very difficult making these platform publishers legally responsible for whatever people post on their sites.
Yeah.
Right. Because, that's whack-a-mole in a way that's, would require massive surveillance, even more than already exists, and is arguably unfair, in addition to a constriction on free speech. That said, these companies, which are enormously powerful and have shown an ability to sort of twist our minds and democracy in particular, do have control over the algorithms. That's how they monetize. That's how they optimize for engagement. And that's one of the main reasons they're driving people towards this extremist conspiratorial content, is because it reflects something about the human mind. We gravitate towards this conflict and crisis, but it meets their economic agenda because it increases engagement. They have control over the algorithms, unlike what people post on their platforms. And that's the area to reform. There needs to be transparency around their algorithms. There needs to be accountability around the algorithms. And what the Filter Bubble Transparency Act, which is a bipartisan supported in the House by Ken Buck and David Cicilline, Republican and Democrat respectively, and in the Senate, it would basically allow people opt out of algorithmic optionalities. I don't think that probably goes far enough. We need to treat this as a complete crisis of our ability to reason together. And I think a lot of the big tobacco, the understandings that we got out of big tobacco, I think, are enormously applicable, not only this, but also to climate change and climate change denial, the manufacturing of doubt.
Yeah.
But so I just think this is absolutely critical that we do this soon, because it has massive implications for the next elections and for the trajectory of democracies versus autocracies.
I definitely want to look into that and learn more about it and listen to the debate around it. I feel like
it's where it's at.
I feel like my friend Jeff Jarvis might disagree with you or others on that, but I don't know. I still am having a hard time understanding it, but I'm definitely looking into it. Hey, I just also wanted to ask you about this other thing that you've been covering, something that's been, there's just such a flood of information during the Trump administration, just so many scandals all of the time. But I guess it's hard to decide what to focus on. But when it comes to the one where, COVID seems to be probably the most important because there's such a huge loss of life, and new reporting showing that the Trump administration tried to downplay what they were seeing, what they were thinking. And if we had eyes and ears, you knew that was the case. But how important is this new reporting? And I mean, at what level of scandal does this rise?
So with the new House testimony that's been released in emails by Trump administration era CDC officials, makes it clearer than ever that the Trump White House tried to influence the reporting of COVID data early on inappropriately. They tried to and succeeded in decreasing testing for a period for asymptomatic folks, which probably increased the spread of COVID at a critical period. That's what Deborah Birx believes. Thinks that otherwise it could have been capped out at around 100,000, she has said, versus the 750,000 deaths, which is the deadliest pandemic in American history. We're up to the equal number of deaths of people who died in the Civil War. Okay. And the more information that comes out, you just see this attempt to politicize the pandemic, to suppress information, to interfere with the scientists and the data at the CDC, that because they feared it would make Trump look bad, that impulse drove a lot of the growth of COVID in the United States. And don't get distracted. Part of it is they sort of flood the zone with stuff to confuse folks. This could not be more important in terms of just the full accounting. There are a lot of other open areas to look at, the lab leak theory versus, natural occurrence of COVID in the Wuhan area being one of them. But this is really critical. And we have the information from the testimony of Trump CDC officials about the way that the Trump administration's attempts to interfere with the science and the response early on out of a concern for optics compounded the deadliest pandemic in American history.
Okay, well, lots more, and you can about what John is reporting and thinking at his. You can just look him up on Twitter. Go to his profile on CNN. Obviously, the new book coming out, which I'm very excited about. But
new CNN digital series too. I want to say, CNN Reality Check on the Extremist Beat, which is doing very well. And I want to thank everyone for watching that on CNN platforms and YouTube.
If I knew about that, I forgot about it. But in prepping to talk to you today, I saw. I was going to ask you about that right now here at the end, because it seems like you're not publishing as many written columns, but your reality check seems to me to be very similar to a column, and media is changing, and we do our column. I prefer that because I don't want to read on a screen, because I look at
I don't like to read.
Well, I mean, I know how that sounded.
Pete don't like to read.
I want to listen.
No. You're not wrong. Look, I mean, I write a column basically every day now, and I just deliver it on air. But I do all the writing. I do all the research.
Yeah.
There's some folks I can lean on because CNN has a very robust, fact checking team and library and all that. But I mean, and the reality check series, Extremist Beat, which is really an extension.
Yeah. Could you tell me about that? I'm looking at it right now. I'm going to press play as soon as you hang up. This has always been something I've been you and I have always been fascinated with it. You professionally, in terms of investigating and writing about it, me, I guess professionally, asking people like you who are covering it. So tell me about this. This is just an extension of the work that you've always done and super important.
That's right. We're building out the Reality Check brand. And this series, this digital series, draws on and extends and updates my work that began with the book Wingnuts a decade ago, which you remember, which is looking at extremism in American politics, its roots, the history of it, and how it applies to today. And so each of these are around 14, 15-minute segments.
I like it.
That begin with a 3-4 minute monologue where I really lay out the history of these individual areas. So that, this goes from everything from, the role of militias to white identity politics to, on and on and on. We've done a half dozen of them so far and a lot more to come. Media is coming up this week, which you'll love. Last week we posted, a look at how to get out of a cult. And then I interview experts. Sometimes they're CNN reporters, particularly Donny O'Sullivan, Sarah Seidner, and Ellie Reeve.
Yeah.
But also issue experts outside. And like when we looked at the rise of disinformation, I introduced Thomas Ritt, who wrote a great book on the secret history of political disinformation. And so we really create just a lot of deep context for folks in a really kind of engaging way, drawing on reporters and experts to talk about the history of this stuff, where it came from, how it's impacting our society, and then crucially, suggestions on how to solve it.
Yeah.
Solutions.
Yeah.
And that's critical to me. So it's all my work is, I try to blend the past, the present, and the future. And the future is all about solutions.
And you do great work, and I'm psyched to be able to have you on to talk about it. And I'll link to the new digital series in today's show notes. And John Avlon, always a great pleasure, my friend. And
you too, my friend.
I'll talk to you. We'll catch up soon. Thank you, sir.
Sounds good, brother. Be good.
Stand up. All right, there you go. John Avlon, Dean Obeidallah, news, the sponsor, Indeed.com/standup. There's your reminder for all of it. Thank them. And most importantly, thank you for joining me here on the Daily Podcast. Tell your friends, write a review, subscribe to the YouTube channel, follow me on the social media. What else can I plug for you? That's it. Let's get out of here, shall we? Thanks for listening today. I love you guys. Check us out on the Discord platform if you haven't already, if you're a subscriber. And email me, standupwithpete@gmail.com. Any of your comments, criticisms, compliments, jokes, ideas, what you smell like. I asked you that earlier. Standupwithpete@gmail.com. And I'll talk to you tomorrow. John Carroll, take us out, will you?
Stand up. Show your face of every color, yellow, black, red, and brown. She's the place where every lost child will finally be found. There's only one thing to do before we stand our ground, and that's stand up. Stand up. Well, the founding fathers saw the land for all. They had to stand up. They had to stand up. They had a keen imagination for a crystal ball, drawing all the plans of stand up. But all they had to go on was the time they were in, with other causes for laws, and since they weren't even sin, they knew that change was gonna come before the change could begin. They had to stand up. All right, they had to stand up. We got to stand up. We got to look the devil square in the eye. We gotta let him know it's his time to go, and make it clear when all we hear is a lie. Why you lying awake wondering where the money all went? It'll be the cost of freedom that'll go unspent. You can see him flee the scene of that experiment if you stand up. All right, we got to speak up. We got to reach up and raise your voice in every way you know how. Don't be toes up. You got to show up. Ain't no better time to do it but now. No need to pledge allegiance to no wanton tribe. Rise up, show obedience to the voice inside, and listen well, and it'll tell you not to run.